Welcome to the Varsity Voices podcast, where we bring you the inside scoop on Chicago Catholic League football. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and like us on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can also find us on X at varsity_voices1, Instagram at _varsity voices, and Facebook at the Varsity Voices Chicago Catholic League football. And we're also on YouTube. If you want to weigh in on anything, you can leave us a comment or email us at varsityvoices312@gmail.com. I'm Joe Frevoletti, one of your hosts, and here with me is your other host, Dan Frevoletti. And Dan, today we continue our preseason special episodes of From the Coach's Office, and this time we had the chance to talk with the head coach for Benet Academy, Pat New. Before we get to that, though, Dan, I have a question for you. Do you have a bucket list?
I don't have anything written down, but there are definitely things I want to do. Mostly places I want to go. I'm not a super adventurous type, but definitely, yeah. I'm sure I have a list. I would say that if I hear something that, like, oh yeah, I would like to do that, put it on my quote unquote bucket list.
Yeah, so I don't have things written down either, but, I have a bucket list in my head. One of the things that is always been on my bucket list is I want to drive a big truck, a semi-truck, right?
Cool.
So lucky me, this past weekend, because of one of my good friends from college, Ron Dibble, who owns Dibble Enterprises and Dibble Trucking, went out there for the weekend, and guess what I got to do?
You drove one.
I got to drive a big truck, and it wasn't just, hey, get in the truck and you can back it up a little bit and go forward a little bit. It was like I got in the truck. He gave me a couple instructions. He was in there with me, by the way, so I didn't do this on my own, and we pull out of his, Dibble Trucking parking lot and take a right-hand turn. And the next thing I know is I am on I-55 heading south, going 75 miles per hour in a big rig, driving a big rig.
Nice. All right. Check that box.
So I checked that box, which was awesome. So I got to give Ron Dibble a shout out and Dibble Trucking. Because, it's not often that somebody can help you cross something off your bucket list. And Ron was able to do that for me.
That's awesome. What is it hard to drive?
Surprisingly, what would you think of like sitting in a truck and driving? Like you're shifting, you're pushing the clutch.
A lot of stuff to do.
Big steering wheel, a lot of stuff to do.
Pull the horn. Yep. When all the kids coming by, giving you the horn.
The horn is still there. It is just a rope up, left hand reach up, pull down on that rope, and that blasts that horn, which I did, of course.
Good.
Several times at cars that I passed going 90. Yeah. But, the trucks these days are very sophisticated, I found out. So at least this truck, no more shifting. It's automatic, right?
It's automatic. Okay.
Automatic, awesome. It's got the air brakes, of course, and all that kind of stuff. But the steering wheel is about twice the size of your steering wheel in your car. So that's a little bit different, kind of maneuvering that steering wheel. But other than that, it was not easy to drive, but not hard to drive either. It was kind of somewhere in between.
Could you eat a double cheeseburger from Marnell's while driving the big rig? Could you steer with your belly if you had to?
We talked about that, and I said I probably could steer with my belly. And since I didn't have to shift anything, I could have something in my right hand. And it could be a cheeseburger.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That would be nice. That's the final frontier, I would think, for truckers.
Yeah, I would think so too. So when I left today, I left uh, Dibble's house and Dibble Trucking to come back home, um, I told Ron, I said, next year when I come back, we're going to do the advanced course. And he said, all right, what that is we're going to put a big ass trailer on the back of this and you're going to drive that.
Ooh. Oh, so this was just the front part of the truck?
This was just the front part.
Oh,
Yes.
that's cool. I always thought those looked cool, like a transformer.
Yeah. Um, and I said, fine, as long as it doesn't have a 90,000 pound propane tank on it. Dibble Enterprises and Dibble Trucking primarily, delivers propane around the country. And it's not your little propane tank that you hook up to your grill. These are 90,000 pound propane tanks that I don't know. They can power a city from how big they are.
Well, I get a little comfort knowing you weren't dragging 90,000 pounds of propane around with it. So I picture you pulling the trailer as well, and that gives me a little comfort knowing that you were just doing the forward part.
Yeah, and good thing I quit smoking, 35 years ago, because I was surrounded by propane for the whole weekend. Yeah, so
That's good. That's a good, unique bucket list item. I bet a lot of listeners would have that same thing on theirs.
yeah,
If they thought about it or it was presented to them like that, like absolutely
yeah.
sign me up.
What little kid, especially a boy, playing with trucks when they're 6, 7, 8 years old, didn't dream of driving a big rig, right?
Did you get it on video at all?
I do have a little video.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I'd like to see the video at some point.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure I want to share it because there's certain points where I may be screaming a little bit.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
As you run a state trooper off the road, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yep.
I'm just getting used to this. This is day one of my
First time.
trucking experience. Yeah.
No CDL.
Yeah. All right. Good. So anyway, I got to cross an item off my bucket list.
I like it. Yeah, that's a good one. That is
Yeah.
a good one for sure.
Yeah. All right. So we have, like I said, a special episode again from the coach's office. And we had a chance to talk to Pat New, and I think head coach for Benet Academy. And Dan, we probably got to declare, even though we've alluded to this, in previous episodes, but you and I are both graduates of Benet Academy, played football there. We know Pat well. He's one of your best friends. You've coached with him. You've played with him. We definitely try to stay impartial, right, in the interview. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure people knew that. If you hear any questions or certain things, we're good friends with Pat. We like
Yeah.
Pat. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we get there, get a little personal touch with Pat, ask him a couple fun questions. But yeah, we played in high school at Bennett, and then we played at Northwestern together. So with another coach on the staff, Brendan Bentley. So uh, it's and the thing I wanted to touch on is, and you could probably say this about all sports in high school, but the relationships. One of the things we tried to impress upon the kids is that the wins and losses, you certainly want to win, you want to go to the playoffs, you want to make it a long run, but really the thing that lasts, and I think Dibble was a college teammate of yours.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that lasts are the relationships, and that's what's going to have the lasting effect. You'll eventually forget, most of the scores, if not all of them, of the games you played in, but those relationships that you build in high school, starting your freshman year, it's really cool to see guys, a bunch of players that come in, they don't know one another, and start to build those relationships that are going to last a lifetime. And we always used to tell the players, we're kind of the proof that shows that we still hang out, we still share stories, the same stories. They just, as everyone knows, they get better over time. So we've I think we may have one in this interview. So Pat did a great job. He was forthright. Bennett's in that unique position that we find a lot of Catholic League schools in. That 4-5 mark, and they've been there 3 years in a row. So I know they're itching to turn that around, and would like to leave no doubt, but and certainly get to more than 5 wins. But you really, it becomes kind of an obsession, I think, to get to that mark where you can feel assured that you're in the playoffs. And typically in this league, 5 wins is going to get you in.
I found it interesting. I remember when he started coaching at Benet, or got the head coaching job.
Sure.
Right? It doesn't seem that long ago. But I think in the interview, you say something like he's one of the longer tenured coaches now in the Chicago Catholic League. Right?
Yeah.
Time has flown by. He's had some ups and downs. Obviously, I mean, he's made the playoffs. They've done some really good things when they've gotten into the playoffs. They've had some tougher times or tougher years where they don't get in, but he's pretty steady, right? And he knows what it takes to get things done. He knows what it takes to get the team to a certain level. And I think he just works at that year in and year out. And that's something maybe you develop over time, right? That long tenure of being a head coach.
Yeah, I know he knows how to win, right? And it starts with players, and he's had a little bit of turnover in the coaching staff, but they're in the second year of an offense, a really, really good, high quality offense, and it speaks to what I've said a few times during these interviews, the offenses and defense, both sides of the ball are just getting more complex. You've got better coaching. They've got I mentioned Brendan Bentley on the offensive side of the ball, coaching the offensive line, played O-line in college at Northwestern. Pat was a receiver. They've got a coach, the offensive coordinator was an offensive coordinator in college, at a high level, Coach Harmon. So they are like everyone else, getting a little more complex. You just have to see the consistency this year, I think, is what they're going for.
Yeah, and they're like everyone else too. We've talked to other head coaches, and I think we say this with every single one of them. The Chicago Catholic League is a grinder of a conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you try and evolve, you get better, you try and get better year in and year out, but all the other teams are doing the exact same thing, and it is every game is a battle.
Yeah. Yep. There's just no week off. Once you get in, there's just no week off. There's no team that is like, all right, we're going to roll over. We can prepare our second teamers and be ready by halftime. At least for the majority of these schools, it's not like that. You have some that probably will have games like that, but for the majority, it's a fight for 9 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, Coach New shares some good information in our interview with him. So let's get to that. I think it's 15, 20 minutes or so. But like I said, there's some good information shared here from Coach New regarding himself, as well as regarding Benet Academy and Benet Academy football.
Welcome to a special edition of the Varsity Voices from the coach's office. I'm Dan Frevaletti, joined by my co-host Joe Frevaletti, and in the virtual studio with us today is head football coach at Benet Academy, Pat New. Pat, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Sure.
Well, I've talked to a few coaches, and you're in the same position as several other Catholic League teams. You've had a few years of 4-5 after a ton of success as part of the ESCC. Is that a point of discussion during the summer, or is it just continue to take it day by day?
It's a great question. We, obviously, as you mentioned, we were 8 years in a row in the playoffs in the ESCC, and then actually that carried over into the CCL. And making the change, our athletic director, Scott Lawler, and I were talking about it, and he made a great point. He said it's like taking we were always very competitive in the ESCC. And it's like we're almost like an Iowa, say, of the Big Ten. And he said it's like taking Iowa and putting them in the SEC, right? So obviously the level of competition has been greatly increased, and our schedule has been a challenge. But so it's the challenge for us has been how do we make this transition and adjust to this new format. So. But we're up for the challenge, and I think I'm sure we'll be talking about this upcoming season, and we're excited about the challenge going forward.
Excellent. So, talking to the coaches in the league, they share stories about losing to state championships, state champions, second place finishers, semifinalists. Bennett's no different in that respect, correct?
Yeah. I mean, last year, we were 4-5, and our 5 losses. One was a state champ, 8A state champ. Another one was a 5A runner-up, and then the other 3 were 3 semifinalists. So, that's like I said. It's but one thing I've learned is nobody's gonna, nobody really cares. You still gotta find a way. Yeah, you gotta find a way to win. We've all, I think every coach you talk to, we're all in the same boat, right? So,
exactly.
It's and I thought your non-conference analysis was interesting, right? I mean, there's a lot of teams in our conference that are playing just a brutal non-conference schedule too, and then jumping into the CCL. So it's kudos to those teams doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Coach, how consistent are you from year to year, say, in your coaching approach? Right. I know there's lots of changes that happen from year to year. What kind of tweaks or changes do you make from year to year? What kind of tweaks or changes did you make from last year to this year?
That's something I think that you have to analyze every year. When you look at it, what are we doing that's contributing to our success, and what are we doing that could possibly be improved or deleted? And I was just thinking this morning, we're actually one of the things we do. This is just an example. One of the things we do are red flag days, right? And I snagged this idea from Iowa wrestling, and then when I was an assistant coach at Naperville North. Their wrestling program did this. I think they called it a blue flag day. And they did some really challenging 3-hour workout. It was behind closed doors. And so I wrote a note to myself. I'm like, I want to do that when I'm a head football coach someday. So, of course, we're Benet, so I call it a red flag day. And it's a 5 a.m. workout. And it's basically you think of every miserable drill you ever did as a player, and you include it on one workout. So so what we're going to do, we're actually going to end our summer with a 3rd red flag day, which we've never done before, and then end it with a father-son breakfast. And I was just telling one of our assistant coaches today how great of an idea this was, because I actually grabbed it from our assistant coach, Coach Harmon. And I'm like, I love this idea, right? We're kind of building on what we've done, and then we're creating creating something for the whole program, and then having that fellowship of fathers and sons coming together to do that. Another thing, we've done, and Dan, this because Dan was on staff with us. Our summer, we break out into 4 teams and have these competitions, and the idea behind that was to create competitiveness amongst our team as well as chemistry. And I actually considered, shelving that one because I'm spending a lot more time with the freshmen this summer. Then I saw how excited our players get when they're competing against each other, and I'm like, it's still a great idea. I love this thing, and so I'm continuing that one. One thing we did add this year, which I love, is 6 a.m. workouts in the off season. I think I just talked to a player as we were exiting our 7-on-7 today, and he said the 6 a.m. workouts brought the guys together. And I've never really, I've always believed, let's just go after school, give kids their sleep, and so that's another change I think we've made that's been really positive.
That's great. I like some of those ideas, and anything you can do to bring kids together, and find ways, because double sessions are so limited now. That used to be a time where teams came together because it was so difficult and such a thing to overcome.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so you're a Benet alum, and you've been coaching and teaching at Benet for a long time. You're one of the elder statesmen in the league. I think you've got the 3rd longest tenure in the whole Catholic League. Yeah. There's only one coach with 19 in the years he started. Yeah, Coach Hennessy at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So,
I think he's got more too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a few years on you as well. But how has the game on the field changed in your time?
I don't think the game itself has changed that much. I think everybody. One thing about our conference, every staff prepares so well, and I actually just met with our principal yesterday and kind of was informing her that our entire coaching staff from top to bottom is like 15 to 20, and she's like, "Oh my God, couldn't believe how many people we had." I'm like, "Hey, we go play other teams and shake hands on the staff, and it's like a whole line of like 30 coaches, So, I mean, everybody's got well staffed and everybody works really hard. But as far as the game itself goes, I think one of the biggest changes I've seen is not so much X's and O's, but I just spoke. We just did a 7-on-7 with Wheaton North, Neuqua Valley, and West Aurora today. Every one of those coaches told me the same thing, and that is they only have half their team in the summer because of baseball. I mean, baseball has really expanded their summer, and that's rolling over into football. So it's interesting. I told him, I said I felt a little bit better about our guys because they were facing the same thing.
Yeah, you're not the first coach I've talked to who said that same thing and said between baseball, the seniors to be taking college visits,
right,
family vacations, which are really important in the summer. Yeah, there's just limited time for everyone to get together and do things. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Catholic League and the divisions within the league and how challenging or how competitive they are, and it's always been that way, right? What do you find is one of the most challenging aspects of playing in the Chicago Catholic League?
Well, I think it's twofold. One is the talent level, and two is the coaching. The teams are so well prepared, and then the talent level. I mean, you can see it on the field before the game. I mean, you can look. We were talking about that this morning. You look across the way and you're like, wow, those guys are put together. And so, and if I could share a story, Dan will like this one. We coached together as assistants way back when, and I remember. I don't know. This is probably 20. This might even be 25 years ago. I'm really dating myself. And our guys had little stick legs, and the team. I think we were playing Providence, and Providence, they're big legs, and they were thick. And Dan and I said, well, that's what we need to look like, as a football team, right? I mean, we need to look thick and big. Yeah. And so that's another part of it too. I think I've noticed Catholic League teams are I don't know, man. They lift a lot of weights, and they're all well prepared in the weight room as well.
Certainly dedicated in the weight room. That you find that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I've asked that same question to a couple of coaches, Pat, and the answer is pretty consistent across the board. They
all want to know how big and strong their guys are, and they definitely monitor that during the off season. And
in fact, if you don't mind with some of our linemen, sometimes I'm like, man, I gotta I gotta come up with some other ways to talk to these guys because I feel like all they do is get questions. How much you weigh? How much you weigh? So I'm like, God, I got to build rapport in other ways. I'm just asking them how much they weigh.
They've got to make a T-shirt or something that has their weight on it, just right on the front. Just has their weight. Coach, I weigh X. Yeah.
A weekly T-shirt. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, Coach, you've been at Benet a while. Like I mentioned, what's it mean? What's it mean to be at your alma mater? How does that affect you?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's in some ways. I look at Benet. And first of all, I'm so privileged and honored to be there as a teacher and a coach. It's an awesome classroom environment. Again, I just mentioned to our principal yesterday, when class ends, there are half dozen students who are exiting class saying, "Thank you, Mr. New, thank you." And I'm like, our class discussions with like honors world history freshmen are like really high level, and it's like, wow, what a great place to be an educator. Students are respectful. It's an awesome classroom environment, and then coaching is interesting. Sometimes I forget, you're so caught up in the present and teams you're playing that I forget I played there, right? And then every now and then I'll walk through a certain hallway or go to a certain part of Benet and say, "Wow, I played here back, X amount of years ago," and you have great memories of that stuff too, So it's kind of, you lose. You're so focused on the present, but every now and then you have great memories of being at your school and it's a real honor to be there, and it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, you've walked those halls probably close to, like, you've got to be in the top 10 people all time, the number of times to walk down St. Martin's Hall.
Absolutely, yeah.
Coach, is there anyone that you still look to, whether it's a coach you played for or someone you know, or anyone you look to for advice on a regular basis?
When I was an assistant coach, I was I actually spent 1 year at OPRF, Oak Park, and then I was at Naperville North. I was actually at Benet for 3 years, and then Naperville North for 7 or 8 years. And then as a result, in the past, I haven't spoken to Coach McEwen as often recently, but when we were making our long playoff runs in 16, 17, Coach McEwen was always he's always been kind of a coaching mentor to me. I think he had an amazing career at Naperville North, won 8A state championships. I've always said I kind of have a little bit of a Joliet Catholic connection because he was with Coach Gillespie at JCA, and then he went to Plainfield and then Naperville North, and so that whole Gillespie tree was pretty significant. There's some great coaches coming out of there. And then the other guy, two of them, are the my two predecessors at Benet, Coach Tim Cedarblad and Gary Goforth. Both of those guys, Coach Cedarblad and I still talk all the time. And in fact, I was going to call him today with a question about defense. And so it's great having those guys available. And they've all kind of been coaching mentors to me.
Awesome. Yeah, they are great. Coach Cedarblad, Hall of Famer. Is Coach McEwen in the Hall of Fame as well?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and Gary Goforth had a long career as both a coach and AD, so all good sounding boards for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on the field, so you return all-conference quarterback Ryan Kabaki, but you've got to replace some receivers that had great seasons. In the second year of a new offense, you mentioned Coach Harmon, and he brought a new offense, Benet. Who are you looking to replace, some of those graduated receivers?
Yeah, with this offense, it's, receivers are obviously a huge part of it. And one of the things we're doing this year is we're going to combine our sophomores with juniors and seniors, and just to create a little bit more depth on our varsity. And that's been another great change, by the way, to answer that change question.
Sure.
I was somewhat resistant to it, and I think it's been a really solid move for us. We've got two returning starters in the Lukes. I call them the Lukes. Luke Wilds and Luke Doyle. Luke Wilds is your typical big, tall, receiver that we usually have on the outside. I know I talked to Edgy Tim once, and he told me, he goes, Coach New, you guys always have long receivers on the outside, and we're always like 6'3" to 6'5" on the outside, and so Luke Wilds fills that role. Luke Doyle is kind of your scat back, quick, athletic. He returns. He'll be a junior this year, and then one of our just great leaders and excellent receivers has been Marty Redgowski. Marty will be a two-way guy for us. He'll play receiver and DB. And then we've got some Ben Alberts is a junior, and then a couple sophomores will be helping out as well. We've got some great contribution from a couple sophomores as well with John Erickson and Luca Diomedes.
Oh, excellent!
Yeah,
that is. So you've had a chance to go through some of your summer practices and that. Anything you didn't expect that you're seeing out there? Any kind of pleasant surprises?
I think my pleasant surprises have been a couple of those sophomore receivers who have really stepped up and have been showing a lot of maturity. We note, and the big thing with us too is with these 6 a.m. workouts. We noticed it in the off season. The guys who are super dedicated and were there at 6 a.m. have it's showing on the field, and that's been a great one. The other probably the biggest. It's not a surprise, but it's what I'm most happy about with this team is the senior leadership, and that's something that I listened to your podcast with Coach Racky, and I think a lot of his success is his ability to create this culture of leadership, and I was intrigued by him saying he spends a lot of time on that in the off season. We have 3 senior captains going into the season, and then we'll select a 4th this year. I'll probably have 5. And the three senior captains were awesome. They never missed a workout. And it shows. It carries over. I told them early on, you lead by example. I said, as the leaders go, the team goes. And I couldn't be happier with their leadership, and especially in terms of the example they've provided.
I'm guessing Liam Rooney, all-conference performer last year, is one of those captains. An anchor of the D-line. We talked a little offense. Who do you think steps up on the defensive side of the ball this year with some people to replace?
Yeah, well, the strength of the team is really the defensive line, right? There's three guys getting Division I looks up front with Liam Rooney, Declan Walsh, and Joe Rohde. All three of those guys, they're all kind of built the same way. They're all, 6'2", 6'3", 240 to 250 range. They all move well, and they're very explosive players. Like I said, all three have been really doing a great job leading and playing hard. I mean, it's been tough for our offensive line sometimes with the run game.
Good. Well, that's good. You got to if they don't score, it's hard to lose if the other team doesn't score, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was kind of funny. This morning I told my defense, this is the best D-line I've had since I've been a head coach at Benet. And then Declan Walsh goes, what about my brother and Jacob Snell and Jack Benish? I go, ooh, that was a really good D-line. It might be second. Hey, we'll see. That was a great D-line.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
Yeah. I understand that as part of the summer that you're taking advantage of the rules that allow for a preseason game. I talked to Joe and I talked to the Marmion head coach and Coach Ware, and he was excited to let me know that you guys are playing a game the week before. I guess you call it week 0, right before that. What do you expect to accomplish, or what do you hope to accomplish in that week 0 game?
So, funny you ask, because I was looking at that, and we weren't going to do this originally. In fact, I told another team we weren't interested. And then I thought, the old saying, and Dan, you remember in college, right? The college coaches always said, you make your greatest improvement from week 1 to week 2. And then I thought back on Noblesville a couple years ago. Noblesville had, from Indiana, they started a week earlier. So they had played a game, and then that was our first game. And I think it showed on the field, right? So I think, first and foremost, I want to make it as game-like as possible. We're going to have our regular game routine, order buses, go over. And even though you're not allowed to do special teams, we'll still line up in specials, even though we won't execute specials. Because I think it's important to get that transition from offense to specials and defense to specials, and then back to offense, right, to make that whole transition. So for us, I think it's ironing out all the bugs from week 1 and trying to get all your mistakes out of the way week 1, or in this case, get all our mistakes out of the way week 0, so that in week 1 we're ready to hit the ground running.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Coach, we appreciate your time. Joe, I don't know if you have any other questions. I've got one more, but if you have one more for Coach, feel free.
Yeah, and Coach, I've asked some of the other coaches this same question, so it's interesting to hear what your comments or your answer are. But so if we're sitting down a year from now and doing this same interview, what do you hope we're talking about as far as Benet Academy and Benet Academy football?
Well, first and foremost, it's a resurgence, right? And Bennett's back to where we were in that stretch of 8 years, right, where we made the playoffs. And and I told our team that's goal number 1: get back in the playoffs, because that's where the game's really fun. When there's 32 teams prepping for that Monday practice that first week, and we've been fortunate enough to make the semifinals in consecutive years, a few years back, and man, you get to that place and you're like, man, there's only 4 teams practicing in our whole class this week. So that's where the game is fun. So for me, first and foremost, it's the resurgence of Benet football.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, yeah. Like I said, I've got one more. It's a tough one. I don't know if you're ready for this.
I'm ready.
All right. So the listeners may or may not know, but you and I go back a while, right? We were teammates at Benet, played at Northwestern.
Yeah.
What I'd like to know is, do you have any remorse for spearing me in the back while returning a kick against Air Force in 1989?
Yeah, well, okay, so if we could create some context here for that one. So we were playing at Air Force Academy, and I think you're up in a mile high altitude, right? So it was absolutely dying, trying to get as much oxygen as possible. And we happened to lose the game. I still remember D. Dowis at quarterback for Air Force.
Oh, he was a good
right?
one. Yeah.
He was a great player. Fisher DeBerry was the head coach.
Yeah.
Now we lost the game. I believe it was 63-7.
I don't know why you have to go there with the score.
So I believe, if my math is correct, that would be 9 kick. Well, with the opening kick, that would be 10 kickoff returns, right? So I took about 10 kickoff returns back, and I think by that time, then they were swarming. So by that time, I just ran forward and put my head down, and I did.
Yeah.
Dan was part of the wedge.
Part of the wedge. Yep.
Yeah.
Lucky me. Well, Coach, we really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. Best of luck this year. We hope to talk again, and have a great rest of the summer.
All right, great. You guys, you too, and thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Pat. Yeah.
All right.
So that was Coach Pat New from Benet Academy. And listening to that, Dan, there's, obviously Pat has a attention to the details. He knows where he wants to go from a program perspective and from a football perspective. But he's also realistic, right? In his assessment of where they've been and where they want to go. And he uses the word resurgence of Benet Academy football. And that's interesting. I'm sure that's a driving motivator for him this year. And he's using that with the players on the team.
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating for everyone involved to be at that, and I think each year that they've been 4-5, it's been 4-4 going into week 9. So they've had an opportunity, and I think the players understand that. They, like I said, they'd like to leave no doubt. It's not like it's either 5 or 4 and 4 and 5. I'm sure Pat's thinking, go ahead and go 7-2. Feel free to do that, to leave no doubt. But and it's, I found it interesting that, for as long as Pat's been there, still capable of, adapting the program to kind of, introduce different things, offer some unique challenges, not let it get stale. I think it can do that, especially when you're trying to fill time. These guys have a lot of things going on, and 25 practices, mentioned it several times, is tough in the summer. And to keep things fresh, to keep things doing, it's good to know they're going to do the what Coach called the red flag day. I think that's always been reserved for winter workouts, so they're going to do it and bring in the fathers, for breakfast afterward. That's the kind of thing that keeps the program fresh. It's one of those things that builds camaraderie, builds stories, creates memories for players. So it's good that Coach is doing that type of thing.
Yeah, he sounds like he's constantly looking at ways to improve from year to year, ways to do things better, add different things to the program that he thinks will be beneficial. I love to hear that regarding their program, and hopefully that makes a difference, right, for them on the field, and the success that they have on the field, and hopefully it gets to the playoffs, which I know is the ultimate goal here.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of these things that coaches do, whether it's leadership, whether it's going away together, they're things you can't measure, right? You can't say, well, this is going to give us X or Z, or anything that I can measure and go, but you can go back to it and reference it and say, this is one of these moments where I believe that we became closer as a team, and that translated on the field. And while there's no way to actually measure it, all coaches know that those things are important.
Yeah, his comments about I'm calling it the preseason game, right, against Marmion, and kind of going back and forth in his head as to whether or not he should do it or not. And then coming to the conclusion that, we should do this, and this is the reason why, which is a really good reason, a really valid reason, right? And he's looking he's looking for things that'll make them more successful, and he thinks that's going to be, something that hopefully will add to their success this year. So I love to hear that too.
And I know that coaches probably have to find that balance, right? Bennett is like a lot of other teams, numbers wise, they're going to have a couple guys. I think he mentioned Marty Radgowski playing two ways. They'll probably have other guys that have to play on both sides of the ball. So you've got to balance some of that with, worries about injuries. But I also know that you can't coach like that. Kids can get injured. We had kids get injured, on a weekend during practice. It was not even during practice. They were playing basketball or doing something over the weekend, hanging out, falling off, boats, anything that can happen does happen. So you can't coach worried about injuries because they're just unavoidable, and you have to prepare the team the best way you can so you can make that playoff push.
Yeah. So we've done how many interviews now with some of the head coaches? 6
or 7,
6, 7, 8, something like that. And one of the things I find interesting is that out of those 8, let's say 8, 4 or 5 of them have all mentioned baseball and it cutting into the football schedule. So I think we're going to have to do something about baseball. I don't know what it'll be.
I know. I know. It doesn't, baseball, I guess you hate to say baseball or anything else is the enemy or the bad guy here. It's, I think we talked about it initially. There's pressures on these kids to do a lot of different things. And you say in one sense, well, colleges, people at the next level want well-rounded athletes. And then you tell them, hey, come and just play football all summer. So you're kind of, we're all talking out of both sides of our mouth there, but I do think that there has to be some sort of balance struck. It sounds like maybe the 6 a.m. practice schedule this summer has done that. It's alleviated some of those conflicts. Not very much fun for the kids to have football practice that early, get up, and then perhaps go and play baseball, basketball, whatever else they might have to do. But it's one of the advantages of being young, right? Yeah, they can do it.
All right. Well, great. That was another great interview. Good to hear from Coach New, and excited to see how they're going to perform this year on the field. Hopefully, like you said earlier, they're not going to wait till the last game to make the playoffs. Hopefully they just go 7-2 and it's a foregone conclusion. Right. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. And Coach assumed our story about him spearing me. He makes it sound like that was on the last kickoff. I don't think it was. I think it was very early. I think it was like kickoff 4 or 5, KOR 4 or 5. So yeah, I don't think he has as good a recollection of it as I do. Obviously, the one being speared remembers that, but I like to give him a hard time about that.
Yeah, I would too. And of course, you're the one who got speared in the back. He's the one who just put his helmet down and ran into a pile.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's still a little achy now as I sit here.
Yeah. You can blame it on him.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for this special episode of From the Coach's Office. Thanks for listening. Make sure you tune in for our next episode where we'll bring you another preseason edition of From the Coach's Office. We've got a couple of other coaches that we've interviewed over the course of the last couple of weeks. So make sure you come back and listen during the week or next week for that next episode. Make sure you subscribe, follow, or like us on wherever you're listening from. Don't forget we're on X at @varsity_voices1, Instagram at @the_varsity voices, and Facebook at the Varsity Voices Chicago Catholic League Football. And we are also on YouTube. And as always, you can email us any questions or comments, varsityvoices312@gmail.com. And make sure you come back and tune in for our next episode.